exiled from the Soviet Union on the following day. It was not until 1994, after the fall of communism, that he returned home.
The Cambridge spy ring is probably the most notorious spy network in the world. In the 1930s, Kim Philby, Donald MacLean, Guy Burgess and Anthony Blunt were Cambridge University students with a shared love of homosexuality, communism and a dream to wreck the entire capitalist system. It's all down to the KGB, who exploited these characteristics and recruited them as Soviet agents. I went to meet journalist Philip Knightley, who knew Kim Philby personally. So Philip, you're the only journalist ever to have interviewed Kim Philby. What was he like?
A fascinating man. I'd been writing to him for 25 years, a couple of times a year, saying, how about an interview? And then suddenly in 1988 he said, yes, okay, come on over. So I went over to Moscow and there he was, the greatest spy in the history of espionage, standing at the door to his Moscow flat in his carpet slippers and his cardi, and we spent the next week together.
So who exactly was Kim Philby?
Well, back in the 30s, there were groups of young left-wing students at Cambridge who felt that the world was going to become a terrible place unless somebody stood up to Nazi Germany. And the only country at that time that showed any sort of spirit for the fight against Nazism was communist Russia. They were recruited one by one into what was called at the time the Comintern, the Communist International, who then passed them on to the KGB, and they became the most effective spy ring in the history of espionage. And Philby was the sort of leader of that group.
How damaging do you think their spying was to the Western agencies?
Well, Philby alone, he wasn't just recruited as a spy for the KGB. The British then recruited him to work for the British Secret Service.
Right.
So you had this amazing situation of a KGB officer being a leading officer, a senior officer in the British Secret Intelligence Service. So everything that Britain did, called espionage war against communism, was betrayed before it even began. And Philby was well on the way to becoming perhaps the head of the British Intelligence Service, a coup unheard of in the history of espionage.
So what sort of information would Philby be handing over to the KGB?
He knew everything that the CIA and SIS and other Western intelligence services were doing in the Soviet Union. He knew what agents they were recruiting, he knew what operations they were mounting.
And how damaging was that?
Well, it negated every single operation that the West mounted against the Soviet Union during that period, from the time that Philby first got in there until he was exposed in 1963 and fled.
What happened to him in the end? What became of Kim Philby?
I interviewed him in January 1988 and he died in May.
Was he happy living over there?
I think he enjoyed his life. He had a beautiful flat. He had a young wife, a young Russian wife. He missed Leon Perrin's sauce, a few little things like that. Yeah.
Other than that, no regrets?
No regrets whatsoever. He died a happy man.
For the final part of our lesson in information exchange, we went to the Holy Trinity Church in Brompton Road, London. This site was revealed by Oleg Gordievsky as a favoured spot of the KGB for making their dead letter drops in the 1980s.
They chose this area as it was conveniently close to the Soviet embassy and because they thought they'd pinned down two very secure spots to hide their film canisters. The sites we're visiting were considered by Soviet intelligence to be the two safest locations for a dead letter box in all London.
The first of those is behind me in the Brompton Oratory. If you actually go into the building and turn right, there's an altar right there. Just around the back of that is some little columns, and they used to place their microfilm and their film canisters behind there to be retrieved at a later date by another agent.
The second location was right next to the Brompton Oratory in the gardens of the Holy Trinity Church. Now there's a statue of Francis of Assisi, as you can see behind me, and this area used to be fenced off. The KGB used to drop their film canisters between the fence that surrounded the statue and this tree right here. If an agent wanted to let Moscow Center, which was the Soviet intelligence headquarters, know that he was going to make a dead letter drop, he'd come to this lamppost in Mayfair's Audley Square and make a blue chalk mark.
Once they'd noticed the mark, Moscow Center would make their own chalk mark here on this bench in St George's Gardens just around the corner, and the dead letter drop would be made.
having made the drop, the agent would then return to the lamppost and erase the chalk mark.
Moscow Centre would then erase the mark on the bench once they picked up the delivery at the church.
Unfortunately, neither of the locations were all that secure, as the rogue agent Oleg Gordievsky passed on their locations to the British Secret Services, who managed to intercept many of their secret messages back in the 80s.
So the locations weren't as safe-tied as they thought.
Bad luck, Ruskies.
Join Kelly Brook and relive the dream. Love that one! Dirty Dancing, the time of your life, starts Wednesday at 9, exclusive to Living.
Welcome to Spy School. The world's intelligence agencies are as busy as ever, and more money is spent on spying now than at the height of the Cold War.
This is the show that reveals how it's done. We'll be learning the espionage trade with some of the best experts in the game.
And I'm here to make sure that everything's done by the book. My name's David Shaler. I used to work for British intelligence. Coming up on the show, details of Britain's spy centres and why drinking can damage the security of the state. The Assassination Files investigates why Vatican banker Roberto Calvi was found dangling from Blackfriars Bridge with his pockets full of stones. And we offer tips on secret rendezvous and how not to get noticed.
The streets of London are steeped in spy history. You can barely turn a corner without finding a building that a former MI5 chief commandeered or a KGB defector was not debriefed in.
But the tour I sent them on focused on the actual operational centres of intelligence gathering.
So Lorna and I put on our trainers, coats and caps in an attempt to pass as harmless tourists while photographing and recording crucial details of the spy headquarters in London.
Lovely.
We've come up with some cover stories. We're actually going to be a couple who've come to London just for, say, the weekend, and we're going to check out all the sites.
And we're going to be pretending to filming each other while really we're checking out MI6 buildings, Russian embassies, etc.
We're going to try and get as close as we possibly can without being apprehended.
Come on, sweetie.
The MI6 building is at Vauxhall Cross in South London. It was built in 1993 and cost 240 million. Way over the official budget, but any talk of the cost overrun was considered a breach of the Official Secrets Act. There are said to be 5 more levels of computer citadel below. They decide to cross the river to get a closer look.
There doesn't seem to be any security whatsoever. Obviously there's cameras all around the place. 7 or 8 of them we can see quite visibly. We finally found the entrance. There's somebody coming out of the exit, the gate's moving back.
But then a security guard arrives.
Have you finished here now?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. They get rather, if you know what I mean.
They get rather...
Anybody going in and out of the building, they don't like to have them filmed or...
Oh, right. No, we haven't filmed anyone going in or out. We have been spotted, we have been asked to stop filming, very nicely, mind. So we're going to stop now and head off towards MI5.
MI5's headquarters is at Thames House, Millbank, London.
Okay, just over there behind us you can see the MI5 building. MI5 concern themselves with domestic security, basically protecting the realm. MI6, where we were earlier, are concerned themselves with overseas spying and espionage. On the first floor, that's where the computers are stored that have got enough storage space for every single member of the British public to have a 1,000-word file on them. There's 3 cameras, one above each door, but obviously they don't seem to be watched by anyone because we've been out here for 20 minutes and no one's paying any attention to us whatsoever. I'm going to just go and take a closer look.
It is thought over 1 million people have their names on file in the MI5 registry.
Okay, we've come to Carlton Gardens just off the Mall to have a little look at MI6's main recruitment office, where in fact Richard Tomlinson was interviewed for his job in MI6 by a certain Mr. Halliday. As Richard Tomlinson went back to this office over the years, there was still a Mr. Halliday in the same position, but in fact there was a different person there each time he went back.
Number 3 Carlton Gardens was home to one of MI6's most secret departments, Section Y, who were responsible for intercepting Russian military and diplomatic communications. And if you think that the minibus parked outside looks familiar, you'd be right. It's the same minibus we saw earlier leaving the MI6 building.
There's a succession of doddery-looking gentlemen in there in school blazers and ties, so obviously it must be something to do with the Secret Services. Either that or cricket. Krav Maga is the official self-defense system of the Israeli Defense Forces. It is also the martial art that husband and wife team Alwyn and Sue Dixon practice on each other.
A stabbing attack with a long weapon could be a stick, it could be an umbrella, it could be a rifle with a bayonet on. The defence is much the same. It involves a body defence, a deflection and a ferocious counter-attack. This is as taught to the Israeli Defense Forces. Another common way of controlling people and manoeuvring people is with a headlock from the side. Very difficult to come out of unless you know how. The Mossad are teaching this to children in the school playgrounds.
Coming up later in the show, we'll find out the best ways to catch people in compromising situations in our how-to guide on secret filming. And we investigate the case of the missing laptop, lost after an MI5 drinking session. Now on Spy School, the Tomlinson tapes. Richard Tomlinson was the MI6 agent who wreaked revenge on his former employees by revealing state secrets in his book The Big Breach. Here, we learn about his exploits in war-torn Sarajevo.
I spent 6 months working in Sarajevo. My job there was to debrief an informer in Sarajevo. And I used to have to go into Sarajevo dressed as a Bosnian with an old scruffy jacket and a scruffy hat on, and go and see this informer surreptitiously approach her house, make sure I wasn't being followed and debrief her, and then make my way back to a safe house and where I was able to send back the information to London. On one occasion I was walking through Sarajevo, it was dusk, and I was about a kilometre away from the house that I was going to, and there was a shell came in. I kind of realised straight away it wasn't going to actually hit me, because someone had told me, a little kid actually who lived in Sarajevo and was used to being bombed all the time, told me that, well, if you hear the shell, that means it's going to land far enough away from you that it's not going to hurt you. And so I heard the shell coming in, but it did land quite close, and it was enough to sort of knock me off my feet and stun me for a while. And it killed a girl who was quite close to me. That was happening in Sarajevo every day, so my experience was something that people who lived there had to do every day of their lives. Anyway, I had to go off and carry on doing the job as normal. But you know, that's one of the jobs you have to do sometimes in MI6.
Box. Box is the nickname for MI5, which originates from the days when its only address was a post office box in London. Only since the 90s has MI5 had a widely published address, a public hotline for informants, and its own website.
Let's rejoin Julian and Lorna on the next leg of their tour of spy locations. In these buildings, spy masters make decisions that affect the lives of each and every one of us.
Behind us is the Metropole building in Northumberland Avenue, WC2.
The people that work in that building provide key intelligence to the Ministry of Defence and to the armed forces, and they make up a large component of the UK's central intelligence machinery.
We're nearing the entrance. There's nobody outside as far as I can see in like a security type role. Still looking like tourists. You can get
Some nice shots all around.
Oh yeah.
And straight into the building. Thank you very much. So the more guppy I look, the less people pay me attention.
But then, security arrives.
And there's the security guard coming out.
Oh no. What's that over there?
Is that Trafalgar Square?
Kensington was one of the key centres of spying in Cold War London.
The salmon pink building behind us is number 3 Rosary Gardens, and it used to be owned by Soviet intelligence. It's now owned by the Russian Federation.
We're going to go and check it out now, and we try and get a closer look at it.
It is thought number 3 Rosary Gardens is still in use by Russian intelligence today, so they must be discreet.
Are we just going to walk straight past?
I'm going to pretty much loiter by it,
Yep.
give you a chance to get it, and then I'm going to point at Brecon Place and we're going to head down there. Well, I think we should go that way.
You think that way?
Did you get any shots there? Any nice shots? I think we've got to go that way.
I mean, I felt that they were watching us, did you?
Oh, definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, we're totally outside their window, right outside their front window with a handheld camera, videoing, pointing towards it. Yeah, I think they were aware we were
it's a
there.
safe assumption.
But I think we managed to pull it off by fumbling with A to Zs and pointing and wearing very stupid clothes. Now we've come to Kensington Gardens, Kensington Church Street, to do the last place on our list, the Russian Embassy.
Located at number 18 Kensington Palace Gardens is the old Soviet embassy.
Isn't that fantastic? Doesn't have any name or anything on the gate. Totally anonymous.
At the height of the Cold War, 60% of embassy staff would have been KGB officers. The building is now the most expensive private house in Britain, valued at 85 million. The Russians have now moved across the road to number 13. Recently, traitor Rafael Bravo was arrested after he phoned the embassy saying he had documents he wanted to sell. This suggests MI5 monitor all communications in and out of the building.
We found the embassies that we were looking for. We got the footage of it, I got some close-ups, and we done all that we set out to do, so mission accomplished.
Coming up in part 2, clandestine meetings behind the Gestapo's back. And why did the KGB bear a grudge against the Vatican's banker?
Minnie Driver and Eddie Izzard in the brand new series of The Riches. Wednesday at 9, exclusive to Virgin One.
Plenty more tricks of the espionage trade to come, with a need to know in clandestine filming and a candid interview with iSpy editor Mark Birdsall.
Now, another lesson from the SOE syllabus. The Special Operations Executive were an organisation of British secret agents who were trained to disrupt the Nazi war machine. In this instalment, we learn how to conduct secret meetings.
Madame, vous désirez?
Un café, s'il vous plaît.
The advantage of SOE agents meeting in person to exchange information was that it eliminated the chance of the message being misinterpreted. However, there was the added danger that they will arouse suspicion or that the meeting may be a trap. The meeting must appear innocent, for example, staging a chance encounter with an old friend.
Merci beaucoup.
Et pour vous, monsieur?
Petit cognac, s'il vous plaît. Hello there. Hi.
Oh my goodness. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
It is important to have danger signals organised in advance to abort the meeting if necessary. The agent must make sure he looks out for these.
You missed the danger signal. I lit my cigarette.
What's the matter?
We've got company.
We? Where?
Just over there in the corner.
Is plan going to go ahead for tonight?
Everything's fine, but we must make sure that he leaves the country tonight. You can do that then?
I can do that, it can be arranged.
Marvellous.
Listen, lovely to see you. I really must run, I've got an appointment. But,
Okay, well,
nice to run
send
into
my
you.
love to the family.
Okay, take care of yourself.
Bye.
SOE agents were up against both the Gestapo and their informers. The Germans often recruited attractive women as spies because they would be less suspect than males.
You may be wondering why I'm wearing this rather tasteless tie, but this is no ordinary tie. It is in fact a covert camera. At the front here is a small pinhole lens, and it's connected to a wire which is connected to a transmitter. It's obviously a very useful device in terms of being able to take covert pictures of people without them knowing. Another commercially available device is this pen. It has a lens in the front for taking black and white video and a microphone to record conversations in the top. It even actually writes as well. Obviously, it would be very useful for covering a business meeting covertly. This is a fairly standard alarm clock radio, which has been fitted with a microphone and a video camera. Now, if you're trying to get into somebody's bedroom, obviously if you just planted it there, they would know it was there and they'd suspect something was up. But if you were, say, giving it as a present, they may well take it into their house themselves and record images of what they're doing. This is known as the Trojan horse technique. This looks like any normal clock, but in fact it's actually a video camera capable of transmitting images over long distances. There's a small lens just by the 6, and if we turn it over you can see there are 3 power packs and a transmitter. So if we pop this up here, we'll be able to take compromising covert video of anybody in the shower. This is a very small video camera. And you'll appreciate if you have something this size, you can get video pictures from virtually anywhere. It claims to be the smallest video camera in the world, but I can tell you I've seen far smaller in MI5.
Playback. Playback is what intelligence agencies call false information that has been sent home by an agent abroad after that agent has been compromised and then forced, often by blackmail, to continue sending back false reports. Divinity, deceit and death. These are the themes of the next murder to be showcased on the Assassination Files. Roberto Calvi was Director General of Vatican financiers Banco Ambrosiano, but his shady dealings led to a tragic end. When Roberto Calvi became Director General of the Banco Ambrosiano in 1971, he transformed the financial house into a major international player. However, it was not done by lawful means. A financial investigation found that the bank had illegally exported several billion lira. Calvi was arrested and convicted. On the brink of financial collapse, Banco Ambrosiano was salvaged temporarily with letters of patronage from the Vatican Bank, which itself had been involved in several shady deals. On his release, Roberto Calvi fled from Italy with a briefcase full of documents, intent on making another illegal fortune. But 1 week later, his body was found hanging under Blackfriars Bridge in London. Several bricks were stuffed into his pockets. When the river police cut his bloated body down, they found in his possession a designer watch and £10,000 in cash. This suggested he was not a victim of any ordinary crime. A suicide verdict was overturned as this would have required impossible acrobatics from a 62-year-old man who was overweight and suffered from vertigo. Since he couldn't have been forced alive onto the scaffolding without leaving signs of a fight, detectives believed he must have been strangled elsewhere, then brought to the bridge, where he was then strung up. The killers then escaped by boat. But who did it? It's thought the KGB ordered the death of Calvi to stop the Vatican's clandestine funding of anti-communist causes. Calvi was indeed involved with Licio Gelli, a KGB agent and head of a renegade secret lodge called P2. Members of P2 reputedly wore black robes and addressed each other as Friar. Is it just coincidence that Calvi's body had been found hanging from Blackfriars Bridge?
The CIA and British intelligence both have in-house magazines, but of course you have to be in active service to read them. For the rest of us, I Spy is the only publicly available magazine devoted to espionage. Mark Birdsall is the editor. He was previously a professional investigator and has always had an obsession with spying. So I went to meet him. Mark, welcome to Spy School. What's been the biggest scoop that you've had at I Spy?
I think possibly receiving intelligence on Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, several months before the attacks in Washington and New York. Yeah, we were informed that MI5 had received information from people who were passing through London that a major operation was in the planning stages. They didn't know where it was going to happen, and they didn't know in which town or city, but had possibly the Americans got involved at that stage, maybe they could have done something about it. But we actually published that in our first and second editions, that bin Laden was planning a huge attack. But of course we didn't know where, and we didn't know when, and we didn't know how.
Do you think, though, that our Secret Service is as modern as it could be?
I think that's a difficult one to answer because, you know, you can move towards more technology. You can move towards machines, computers, surveillance, reconnaissance, etc., i.e. moving towards the American way, but I think MI6 still has some very good sources, good human intelligence. Had for example, the FBI and CIA had human intelligence, or more of it, then the 11th of September atrocities in New York, Washington, etc., that wouldn't have happened. So I think it's important, you know, MI6 have probably got it right. You know, they've got some very, very good ground sources.
Now, after the spy tour of London, my guide to the hotels, bars and restaurants historically used by Britain's spooks. We also investigate the MI5 laptop, which mysteriously went missing after a group of British intelligence officers got drunk in a tapas bar near Waterloo.
Over the years, many of London's top hotels have become notorious spy haunts, like this one here, the Jolly Hotel St Ermines. It's situated just opposite New Scotland Yard, and Westminster, with all its government offices, is just down the road. During the Second World War, MI6 used the top 2 floors of the hotel for its offices. The Special Operations Executive was also based here, where it's rumoured that they stored explosives. Throughout this period, their presence here was a closely guarded secret, to the extent that the buttons on the hotel lift only went to the 4th floor. This door used to lead to a secret passageway directly connecting the Houses of Parliament and the hotel. This is arguably London's most discreet rendezvous. Here we are in Cloisters Brasserie, the hotel restaurant. MI6 uses this place to interview potential new recruits. In fact, Kim Philby, one of the treacherous Cambridge Ring of Five, was interviewed twice here. Or you could proceed to the Caxton Bar. It's still used today by intelligence officers to meet agents. As you can see, it's ideal. The red satin wall coverings muffle sound, and the dark corners provide discreet places to debrief agents. Another infamous meeting place for spies is here, Brown's Hotel in Piccadilly. This is a drawing room which has been used for many meetings of famous spies. As you can see, it's quiet, comfortable, and above all, discreet. During the Cold War, one such meeting which took place at this hotel concerned Peter Wright, who wrote Spycatcher, Alistair Watson, and Anthony Blunt, who was subsequently exposed as a KGB spy. During the 24-hour debrief, the men drank several bottles of gin, and it ended up in a fight. Obviously, drinking large amounts of alcohol on the job is not recommended. Otherwise, you might end up losing your security laptop or briefcase.
That's exactly what happened to one MI5 intelligence officer after a drunken night at this tapas bar, not far from the main MI5 building at Thames House.
So we're trying to build up a clear picture of what happened to the MI5 laptop.
It's very difficult to say because how do you recognise an MI6 or an MI5 agent? First thing I heard of it was on the Tuesday morning. We just had a load of reporters at the front door. They wanted to know, you know, what if we knew anything else or what was going on and what had happened. And I said, well, you know, we don't know what's happened.
The morning after the laptop was lost, 2 undercover MI5 officers went to a local minicab firm to try and track it down.
2 of them came in and approached me and said that a colleague of them was having a drink and they believed through the worse for a drink they must have left their case in a car by accident. We got our books out on record and computer and went back on every job we did that day, and none of our car matched up to that. Apparently what happened, it was the owner or the landlord of the bar who phoned the cab, wasn't them, so that's why they had no clue which cab they phoned.
After the female MI5 trainee got blind drunk, her employers put an ad in a London paper in a bid to get the laptop back. The ad purported to be from an academic who had lost vital research notes.
I wouldn't say that people here have been nobbled, but certainly there's very much a reticence to speak about the whole case. Definitely. And to be fair, who can blame them?
You are so conniving. This is what it's like in the heat of battle, baby.
I Want to Work for Diddy, Tuesday at 10 on Virgin One.
Hey, settle down at the back. This is quite an experienced field. Now on your marks, get set and go. It's me, Craig Charles, and we are ready. We've got another half an hour of that Japanese game show that is definitely not a stroll. In fact, it's like poetry in motion, fueling the Pacific Ocean with the notion there's nothing more to life than soaking and choking. Stay seated because coming up in today's mayhem, we're getting lost in the honeycomb maze. We're gate crashing our way into Knock Knock. We're singing while we're swinging in Dragon Lake. It's this simple, people. It's Takeshi's Castle. The format is always the same. Our man's man and lady's favourite. He's got a stiff handshake and a lascivious tongue. He heads his gang of gregarious gamers, and they have to crawl, brawl and maul their way through a number of humbling hurdles. Set by the Count himself, he's an evil man, and those left at the end will have the opportunity to storm the castle. But hey, we're off. The first game up for 100 hopefuls is Bite the Bun. In this, our contestants are desperate to get us serving, madam. But as ever, there's never enough to go around, so some just end up rather unsatisfied. Of course, they're not helped by the fact that they can't use their hands. And their torsos have been wrapped by rubber rings. Sounds like a night out in Mayfair. As a guest to Jamie Theakston, of course, never goes in slow-mo quite like this. Lovely music, lovely people, lovely game. Come on, get it down your neck, lad. Oh, she could use her hands. Oh, bit of teamwork there.
恥も外文も金繰り捨てて攻撃軍の悪戦苦闘が繰り広げられている。折からの雨に
Steady, madam.
攻撃は思うに任せない。しかしそこは何万人もの中から選び抜かれた攻撃軍の誇りと名誉。
These are the people going through.
たらふくパンを腹に詰め込み。
These are the people almost going out.
あの憎きたけし城を
Come on, give it a good tug. Tug my bread. Come on, she does it. She gets that bread between her mouths. Slips out of her ring, though. I don't know what's going on now.